federal government says it will apologize to Canada's LGBT community, just not right now. In a statement, the government said by the end of the year, it will acknowledge its role in the discrimination and injustices faced by those Canadians since the 1960s. But first, there will be talks over the summer about how the apology should be worded and where it should be delivered. So why is the consultation necessary? Joining me now, Randy Boissonnault. I got to get my tongue around that. Liberal MP and Special Advisor to the Prime Minister on LGBTQ issues. So first off, let's talk about the fact Egale issued a report last June. They called for the government to apologize. So the announcement came today, but why did it take so long?
So I think what we need to set the table with is that our government is committed to getting this apology right on behalf of LGBTQ2 Canadians, and that our whole of government approach is to get a whole bunch of issues right with legislation and with changes to the criminal code and other things we're working on. And I think if we take a step back and look at after I was announced in November 15th, this is the first time the government has had a special advisor, period. It's the first time we've had somebody focused on LGBTQ issues. And then in the March 22nd budget, we announced a secretariat that is now supporting the work. And I have been actually meeting with members of the community from coast to coast to coast starting in late January, as recently as a couple of weeks ago. And what we have to do is we have to get this apology right. So we are going to spend the summer to make sure that when we do apologize, that we make sure that we have all the facets of the community represented. And you're right, we have to go back to the past, and we also have to go to the more recent past, because we're talking about programs, policies, legislation that led to injustices and discrimination against LGBTQ Canadians.
Many advocates, though, expected a much quicker reaction. The slow response even led to some class action lawsuits against the government.
I'm not sure there's a causation there. I think I think both trains were leaving the different stations at the same time. And so there is a class action suit. And I think if you talk to the plaintiffs, they would say that our justice lawyers are working, diligently with them. The process is unfolding as these things do. And I think what's important to understand is we committed to getting work done on pardons for people who have criminal records for crimes that are no longer on the books. We've also talked about expungements, and we're working through those issues. We're also committed to seeing C-16, the protection for transgender Canadians in the Criminal Code and the Canadian Human Rights Act, enshrined into law. It's in the Senate now. It needs to get out. It needs to finish in committee and get to the floor of the Senate. We're also going to do a comprehensive whole of government review on gender information. So when does the government of Canada ask for gender information, and what do we do with that information? What's the transparent use of that information? So that is also something that is being worked on. And so there is a lot of work that we have to do as a government. We're still working on the decriminalization, the taking out the over-criminalization of HIV positive status, and also working with HEMA Quebec and Canadian Blood Services to get the blood ban removed entirely or significantly reduced. So there's lots on the domestic front.
There sure is. That's quite a bit there. We're just talking about clearing criminal records as well, and explaining compensation. What about that?
So again, if we talk compensation, that is on the side of the class action suits. Okay. So that is something that would be negotiated between the plaintiffs and the people they're representing and the justice lawyers. What is important for us is to make it very clear today that there will be an apology to LGBTQ2 Canadians in 2017. And I've been clear that the apology would happen in the mandate. I always said it would happen earlier in the mandate than later. And we're being very clear today that this will happen before the end of 2017.
We were talking just before we started here that Canada will also be seeking to co-chair the Equal Rights Coalition. Tell us a bit about that.
Sure. The Equal Rights Coalition is a group of 33 nation states that have come together over the last few years to advocate strongly for the end of violence and discrimination against LGBTI persons around the world. And Canada is seeking to co-chair that organization. We're also doing work with the Commonwealth of Nations to make sure that June 1, the Commonwealth Equality Network gets passed through that foreign body, that international group, and also continuing to be leaders in the Organization of American States through our role as a key member in the core LGBTI group of the Organization of American States. So we are working internationally and domestically to make sure that at the end of the day, everybody can just be who they're meant to be. I mean, we're talking about people. We're talking about being free to love who you want to love. We're talking about being able to express whatever gender, you want to express and feel deeply that you need to express. And it's 2017, Hannah. We have to get beyond this. It shouldn't be hard for Canadians who are in transition to travel from one part of the country to another. We shouldn't have questions.
People don't usually think about that.
No, but if you try to travel across this country right now as a trans person, they're going to be subject to more scrutiny and more security than you or I would be subject to. And that's not fair, it's not just, and that needs to change. And so when we take a look at a whole of government approach, that's what we're talking about. That's why C-16 matters. That's why repealing S-159 matters. And it's also why we have to look at all the intersectionalities. So what does it mean to be a queer person of color? What does it mean to be two-spirited? What does it mean to be, transgendered and trying to work, but having people tell you, we don't want you to work here, or you can't get an apartment here. So we've made lots of gains as a community and as a country. We're going to continue our leadership internationally, and we have much more to do both here at home and abroad.
Mr. Boissonnault, thank you for your time, and you have a lot on your plate. We'll keep in touch with you.
Thanks, Anna.
Thanks so much for your time. Appreciate it. Now we want to talk to those from Egale to see what they think of the response from the government when it comes to this apology. Joining me now from Toronto is Helen Kennedy, the Executive Director of Egale, an organization that advocates for Canada's LGBT community. So you just heard what Mr. Boissonnault had to say. Let me get your reaction to that first.
Well, it certainly sounds like he read the report, which is a very positive thing, because he certainly listed off a number of issues that we highlighted in our report that we submitted to the government almost a year ago this coming June. So, I'm very pleased to hear that the apology will come sooner rather than later. The last time he spoke publicly on this issue, it was to come by the end of their mandate. So we're encouraged that it will actually come in the fall, and that there is some discussion around full consultation with our communities this summer. However, I think it's a little disingenuous that he says, when we talk about compensation, that they can't do anything about compensation until the class action suit is complete. They know, and we know, that the government knows of the many military, ex-military people and government officials who cannot currently access their pensions because they were dishonorably discharged or they were fired from their jobs because of their identities. So I think that we need to be looking a little bit more seriously at issues that we can address right now today, and to move on those issues, because every day wasted is another day that these folks get older and older. And I think the timing is right, and we should do the right thing and get this done.
So the timing is important for you, I hear from you. What issues do you think the government can address right now?
Well, the issues of police training, for example, training of the military, training of our judiciary, expanding our healthcare services to trans people. There are a whole slew of issues that we feel that the government needs to address, and can start that conversation now, and we're looking to them to do that. I don't think that we should be using the lawsuit as an excuse for not having these important conversations. And it's also important to point out that our Just Society Committee, although it's an Egale committee, we're not involved in that lawsuit. There are a number of people who are on our committee who decided that this is the route that they wanted to take, but there are many people who are victims of discrimination because of their identities that aren't involved in that lawsuit. And we need to be looking to these people and giving them a voice, and those folks an opportunity to express their concerns about the injustices that happened to them many years ago.
Well, let's talk about the apology. That's going to come, and we hear it's going to come fairly soon. What will it mean to the LGBTQ community?
Oh, I think it's huge from all sides. For the government to stand up and acknowledge the wrongdoing is extremely important. It's an important signal and message to send to youth, our LGBTQI2S youth, who are currently suffering homophobia and discrimination today in Canada, but it also sends a very strong message to the folks who were directly impacted by some of these draconian laws, and it gives, it's just it's long overdue, and it's an incredible thing for us to experience. It also sends a clear message internationally on the international stage to other countries that currently criminalize our relationships. And I know that Mr. Boissonnault made reference to the ERC, the Equal Rights Coalition.
Right.
That's a very important move for Canada. That coalition has only been in existence for 11 months. The current co-chairs are the Netherlands and Uruguay, and they're stepping down. And there's 33 countries that are member states and 2 that are waiting to join. They made a statement on Chechnya, for example. It wasn't as strong as we wanted, but it's still a very good indication that these countries are together to advance global LGBTI rights. So for Canada to step up is a real indication that they're serious about this portfolio, and they take it and have made it a priority.
Now, there's not a lot of time, but overall, how would you grade the government?
I think, it's not, the exam season's not quite over yet. So I think we'll definitely give them a passing grade at the moment. It's for me now, it's more about the consultation and having the right people at the table and not going solo on this conversation. It's really important to bring those impacted into the conversation.
Helen Kennedy, I want to thank you for your time today.
Thank you very much.
Power and Politics will be back after this short break.